Yes. Chair Jailak, talk to me. I don't know if it's my internet.
We have the law.
Sorry?
You have published your law of succession amendment bill.
Good. Now that people will die of corona, we want to make sure the succession bills are well taken care of.
Do you want to kulima wanaume?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I believe we can start now. First of all, thank you so much for tuning in. I believe Honorable Martha Karua will be joining us in just a bit. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and all the possible platforms you can imagine. That's the reason why the conversation is still continuing even on Twitter as well. The poll that we were asking an opinion poll question this morning. What do you consider the top 3 priority governance reform issues in Kenya? This goes out to the people out there, all the citizens. What do you consider the top 3 priority governance reform issues in Kenya? We've given them an option of 6 areas. 1, affirmative action in public leadership. 2, reforming the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. 3, tackling corruption. 4, strengthening devolution. 5, changing the constitution to expand the executive. And 6, proper implementation of Chapter 6 of the Constitution on leadership and integrity. Out of all those 6, we want them to pick their top 3. And we are going to discuss that as well. So far, we have more than 80 attendees and the numbers are still counting. I'll introduce our guest really fast. Honorable Jeremiah Kioni is here, Chair CIOC of the National Assembly. That is the Parliamentary Constitutional Implementation Oversight Committee. And we also have Honorable Samson Cherargei, who's the Nandi Senator. He's also the Chair, JLAC. And we also have Senator Abshiro Alaki, who's the chairperson, Center for Multi-Party Democracy. Honorable Isaac Root is also here with us, former Bomet governor and party leader CCM. And Honorable Martha Karua, NARC Kenya leader, will be joining us in just a bit. Honorable Edwin Sifuna is also here, ODM Secretary General. Roseline Adede is also with us, advocate and FIDA Council member. And King Wakamenchu is also joining us. She's a former presidential aspirant. Will be co-hosting this with her as well and posing all the questions that are coming from the people. But first, without any further ado, let me welcome Franklin Mukwanja, the Executive Director, CMD, to make the opening remarks, and then we'll proceed from there. Frank.
Thank you very much, Trevor. Good morning and welcome all of you to this dialogue session on keeping an eye on governance reforms.
Did we lose him, Trevor?
Yes, I think we lost Franklin there, but we're trying to get him back. And this for us is technology tatuonesha mambo. I'm sure you know. I'm hoping you're keeping your screens very clear. Zoom has had a tendency of showing things that are not supposed to be shown. So we're trying to get Mukwanja in just a bit. And he was essentially just talking about the topic that we are going to handle today and the conversation that we're going to have with the people around us. Frank, I don't know whether we have you back to continue with your remarks.
Sorry for that hitch, Trevor. So I was just saying thank you very much for the various leaders for joining us and Kenyans for making time to have this conversation. The numbers, of course, tell us that there is a keen interest in many Kenyans to set aside time to have a conversation on these critical issues. And we hope that this does not just become a conversation of us as leaders alone, and that is why at CMD we have put in integrated other platforms to ensure that a lot of the discussions that we have are informed by the young people, women, persons with disabilities, politicians, and members of various political parties that have joined looking at the registration. And of course, to acknowledge and appreciate the two chairs of critical committees that are integral to legislations that will be very critical in terms of governance reforms, Honorable Jeremiah Kioni and Senator Cherargei, who will be leading as key speakers in this conversation, and the other panelists that have joined us to make sure that the conversation goes on. I want to thank you very much for making this time, as you appreciate. The law is an important cog in governance of the society, and therefore it's critical that even under the prevailing circumstances, we keep an eye on critical reforms that ensure that this country progresses and our democracy continues to grow. With those very few remarks, let me take this opportunity to invite Senator Abshiro Halake, who's the chairperson of the Center for Multi-Party Democracy, to quickly give her opening remarks and invite us officially to this conversation. Thank you very much, Honorable Halake.
Thank you, Frank. Panelists, my colleagues, I really am grateful for you coming on board. I know you've been champions for democracy in this country. You continue to hold positions that really have been expanding our democratic space. So, Mheshimiwa Kioni, Mheshimiwa Cherargei, my Vice Sifuna, Madam Martha Karua, Honorable Martha Karua, who has been part of this process all this time, Governor Isaac Ruto, you're known as a trailblazer and somebody who can speak, you know, to power, who has really been part of the expansion of the democratic space in our country. I applaud all of you, really, and I know that this conversation is only the beginning. We will get it right and we'll start to really create platforms for all of us from all across party, across country, across tribes, because we are one country. We're going to create platforms that will make sure we speak to ourselves, but not just ourselves. As you know, just a few months ago, we had the People's Dialogue. Our idea is that leaders should be accountable to the people, and therefore we're going to create many of these platforms. And I really look forward to you guys actually coming on board, as you always do for this country, to please then be part of this conversation. For us as Center for Multi-Party Democracy, our mandate is very clear. We are very keen on making sure that democracy is not lost, even as we look at things that are more urgent. Even in this pandemic, we want to make sure that we are not dropping the ball as a country on the gains that our Constitution has given us. As you know, I was reading a report a few days ago where the survey was that more than 84 countries around the world have taken power that is in their constitution to start, because then there was need to really overlook some things to respond to the pandemic. In many cases, these are necessary, and after the pandemic, they'll be given back to the people. In other cases, there's concern that they may not be. So we want to make sure we as the people of this country, we as the leaders of this country are conscious of this, and are actually continuously looking at ensuring that our democratic space, our diversity, our democracy, our politics does not then get overtaken by events. So what we're going to do, and I don't want to talk too much because I know we're starting a bit late, is to make sure that we dialogue, we hold ourselves and others accountable, and we listen to our people so that they guide us in the direction, because we're nothing without the people that put us in public office. I don't want to say much. You know, we as the Center for Multi-Party Democracy will ensure, and actually I'd like to welcome, you know, the citizens to bring to us whatever it is, even outside of this webinar, for us then, you know, to put it as agenda items, both in the floor of the House, because as you can see, our leaders are in Parliament, and outside the Parliament, to make sure that we keep our conversations going, we keep ourselves accountable. Going back to the pandemic again, I know there are many things that are necessary to do. I know there's a lot of resource that our country has to use. We will make sure that we keep an eye on these things as well, so that it goes to the right place, and that the leaders that are, you know, that are supposed to implement some of the projects towards mitigation and cushioning and protection of citizens do so within reason, with the rights of people that, you know, are observed, with our constitution's integrity being observed as well. So this is a multifaceted, you know, platform. Please, this as, and also a safe space. You can say anything you want. It does not matter. You can talk to anybody you want. and you can give us your feedback. So I do not wish to say too much. I know these platforms, and with 80 people in participation, we cannot afford to talk too much, but I welcome you all, and I look forward to a good conversation that will then result in good outcomes for us as a country, even as we fight the COVID pandemic, and even as we go through certain political complexities that we see, and we make sure that we are accountable. So karibuni sana. I look forward to this hour and the next that I know we'll learn a lot, but also we will make sure that we are accountable, and we're going to give you feedback as soon as then we're done with this progress. Thank you very much. Karibuni sana. Trevor, I'll give it back to you because I can see Frank has stepped out a little bit. Back to you, Trevor.
Thank you so much, Chair. And it is very encouraging. I should mention that there's a lot of participation already happening right now. I can see so many questions coming through, and we'll try and handle some of them as much as we can. The hashtag we're using is Eye on Governance. Send in all your questions, and the leaders with us will answer them. Without any further ado, because we started late, like Chair had mentioned, let me now invite Honorable Jeremiah Kioni, is the Chair, CIOC, and at the National Assembly, that is the Parliamentary Constitutional Implementation Oversight Committee, to make his opening remarks, and then we'll kickstart the conversation. Honorable Kioni. Kindly unmute your microphone first, Honorable Kioni, so that we can hear you.
It is okay.
There you are. Thank you.
You can hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
I was saying thank you, Trevor and colleagues, for this opportunity to engage in this useful discussion. I want to say that from the onset, I think it's important to mention that I was part of the 27-member team that was in Naivasha to do the 2010 Constitution with Isaac Ruto and Martha Karua. And I say that because I think there is a point at which we dropped the ball. And I know there are those who hold the wrong view that the members of parliament who went to Naivasha tinkered with the Constitution, perhaps in a way that they thought we should not have done. But the circumstances were different. But where we dropped the ball, colleagues, is after the 2010 Constitution, we did not undertake a civic education program for Kenyans, to the point where today we have a constitution that most of us still have not understood. And crucially, many of the agencies that were supposed to implement the constitution quickly went back to our 1963 constitution. And the committee of parliament that was supposed to keep the ball rolling, which was CIOC, during the last parliament also seems to have taken a break, to the point where the role that I have as the chairman of CIOC during this parliament, and perhaps the beginning of the last 1.5 years, was to try and talk about or bring back the relevance of the committee to within parliament itself, to members of parliament. I had to hold even a discussion with the speaker, the leadership of the parliament, to try and let them see how crucial CIOC is to in the process of implementing the constitution. I say this because when we give ourselves the new constitution 2010, certainly it was clear to those of us who are involved that there were many things that needed to continue being done. And of course, there was the issue of ensuring that the constitution is even implemented as we gave it to ourselves during 2010. So we have been at it for the last 1.5 years, 2 years now. And when we were just about to pick momentum, again, we got this COVID-19, which has without doubt slowed us down. And it is crucial. I want to thank you for this opportunity to think through how do we make sure that we don't lose the momentum. How do we ensure that we continue with the necessary reforms so that we can continue benefiting from the gains that we gave ourselves with the 2010 Constitution? I think it's important to inform the panelists that we quickly came up with a COVID-19 bill that is still within the corridors of Parliament, National Assembly, and it is waiting for publication. And again, because of the budget making process that seems to take center stage at this time, unfortunately, we could not move the bill as quickly as we thought. But that is just one of the many things that we have done as a committee. And I think what I, on the onset, I would want to call on my colleagues is to understand that the 2010 Constitution has within it mechanisms to continue amending, introducing new articles in it. And every time we think that the big players, the big political players are the one who must move the process, we lose out, because there are many things we can be able to achieve if we work as provided for within the Constitution. And if we allow CIOC, not the one we have, but even the committees that we are going to have in future parliaments, to have that mandate and recognize it. There are many amendments that I know I'll have opportunity to talk about, many ideas that have come to us, and but I thought, because we talked about COVID-19, there is that bill that is pending before Parliament, before the leadership of Parliament. It needs to go for publication as a draft so that it becomes a bill. Then it's available for us to discuss the contents of it, so that we can try and give the government some legal mandate or some framework, some platform from where they can effect many of the directives that they have been giving us policies without some law behind it.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Honorable Jeremiah, for those opening remarks. Senator Cherargei, I'll also give you a chance to make your opening remarks very briefly, just about 3 minutes, and then we bring in all the other panelists, because I can see there's so many questions that are already coming through on our chat where so many people are joining us right now. Senator Cherargei, go ahead.
Thank you, Trevor, and my colleague panelists. I wanted to say from the onset that issues of democracy are very critical in the country. I've had so many issues of reforms, constitutional amendments, but the big question we should be asking ourselves, because all these issues we have raised, be it the perfection, leadership and integration, be it reforms of IBC, be it constitutional amendments, all these things go to one thing, that even we as now that we have had this, does it mean that we have done constitutional audit so that we can tell tenants honestly we are having a conversation based on the audit that we have already done for the Constitution? And therefore, in my own opinion, no, we have not paid. Secondly, our political parties that were now being funded by the taxpayers' money, now we wanted to delete them from political patronage and personalities or different political parties. We wanted to create parties that will bring a political responsibility. But up to now, we have not been able to do that. The chairman of JLAS, and the problem with this constitution, I think one of the panelists, Martha Karua, once said, the problem with this constitution is not the constitution itself, it's fully implemented this constitution. And I wish you were able to implement the letter up to the full scope of this constitution before discussing even about its changes. So from where I sit, many laws are still coming, even on the devolution laws to be specific. There are still many laws. For example, as I conclude that Trevor, one of the laws we didn't have a law by 2017 on how assumption of office law on how a former governor can handle it and becoming governor. It's good Governor Isaac Ruto is here. Is that there was no such a law. Now we have come up with that. So it means the implementation process of the
Trevor, could you advise him to
switch
off
the constitution is not yet.
Cherargei, we seem to be having a bit of a challenge with your connection there. I think it's the internet there, but you're continuing with making your point.
Please ask him to switch off his. If he switches off his video, it might be able to stream better just on audio. Okay. The bandwidth.
Let's try what the chair is saying. That switch off your video and then we see if we can hear you better. Cherargei.
I've switched off.
Try speaking now.
What I was saying,
yes,
is where I sit as the chairman of JLAS, there are still so many laws that need implementation. For example, we have not implemented this constitution fully. So let us implement this constitution that has to be to be removed or to be, because most of them, some of them are unconstitutional, and there are still many laws that need to be for example, on the issue of assumption of office of the governor, and Governor Issa here, there was no law up to 2016 except the regulations that were being used. So there are so many laws that need to be passed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Honorable Cherargei. That's a Nandi Senator speaking to us. And Honorable Ruto, I'd like to bring you in, and I can see Honorable Martha Karua has also joined us. Thank you so much for making time. She's the NAC Kenya leader. Honorable Isaac Ruto, the question here is it an issue of not fully implementing the constitution, or is it an issue of lack of political goodwill? Because even if those, and Honorable Kioni was speaking about it earlier on, saying that there needed to be civic education on how to implement that constitution, but we've seen the constitution continuously being ignored, even by the institutions that are supposed to follow it. So even if civic education was done, why haven't we been able to implement our constitution as is? Honorable Ruto.
Yeah, I think, first of all, I think the CIOC has a mega role to play in that. For instance, I think there were certain institutions which we gave a very short life. For example, CIC. They came in for a short while, which was 3 years, and then we did not transit their responsibility to any other institution. We should have transited that to probably the Law Reform Commission, or we should have continued having to appoint members of the CIC, because if you expect a parliamentary committee to drive the process, it could drive the process in any direction, because the committees in parliament operate basically at the behest of the mega political players. So we may drive back to 1963, where the reforms were on the behest of the executive. In my view, we ought to have really strengthened the transition committees, because I think we were a little bit short-sighted in understanding that this would take a long time to get these things done. And then the unfortunate situation is that the civic education groups, and in particular the civil society, have actually fallen out. They were co-opted during the Kibaki regime, and we have never quite recovered from that. I think there is need to revamp that. I'm happy that the Center for Multi-Party Democracy is doing quite a bit in that direction. And I must thank the chair. She's really driving this process reasonably well.
All right. Honorable Karua, thanks for joining us on this. And you just heard, we were speaking about the issue of keeping an eye on governance reforms amid the COVID-19 pandemic. And there's a concern that is being raised in terms of Kenyans not being able to implement the constitution. And Honorable Ruto is saying we should have given some of those institutions a bit more time. Is it time that we need, or is it simple discipline to implement the constitution in this country? Kindly unmute your microphone first so that we can hear you. There. Try now.
Is it fine?
Yes.
Okay, if you can hear me, that's okay.
Yes.
What I'm saying is that while I agree that maybe we gave the Constitutional Committee on Implementation a very short period, I'm of the view that the Committee of Parliament, which Honorable Kioni heads, is perfectly capable of steering the unmet implementation. It's only that Parliament has become so weak, not because of the executive, but because of the caliber of the people in Parliament. And I'm saying that with respect, not all of them, but a majority of them. I remember that when we were in the the initial or inaugural Parliamentary Committee on Implementation, we drove the implementation, not only by making the laws, but ensuring the executive did as was expected by the Constitution. But the Parliament, the 12th Parliament, is a compliant Parliament. It's a Parliament that has failed to rise to the occasion. And I say that with respect to those few members who are doing their best.
All right, we'll get a direct response on that. And let me bring in on Edwin Sifuna. What do you make of that conversation? Has Parliament failed?
I think I want to strongly agree with my senior, Honorable Martha Karua. The basis of all progress, Trevor, is to have some degree of honesty even in these discussions that we are holding. I have a lot of respect for Honorable Kioni, but it is also incumbent upon him to admit that the Bomas draft was the greatest representation of the will of the people, and that what